All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is episode six of the Morning Tea. And today I am so excited to have Heather Bracken with us. Heather is a holistic health practitioner and registered acupuncturist. And I met Heather well over a decade ago. Let's not get specific, but in the holistic health practitioner program at Grant MacEwan. Since then, Heather has remained a dear friend and is my own acupuncturist as well. So I feel very, very confident in having her on here to promote her and what she's doing, and also very excited to hear what she has to offer you guys today. Heather, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course.
So awesome to be interviewed by my friend and to just be doing something like this. So thank you.
Yeah. So to start off, Heather, what do you have on your mug today?
I have just good old coffee, but I like to mix in for my second cup. I do Harmonic Arts, dual mushroom hot chocolate. And so it's kind of like a mocha for my second cup of coffee. Any more than 2 cups of coffee and I start to get jittery. But yeah, it's nice to just give myself a little bit of that, mushroom immunity boosting blend for the second cup. So I have a little bit of that going on.
Fantastic. Can we post that link below later so that people can access that? Because I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in adding that to their own coffee. I know I am.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to chat a bit about that. Mushrooms are such a wonderful addition to just kind of just little things we can do to kind of bolster our immunity, especially at a time like this.
Awesome. So in my cup today, I've actually got 2 cups in front of me. I do have a coffee with me, but I've also got this, and this is actually my herbal infusion that was prescribed to me from Heather. A little bit of nettle in there and some red raspberry leaf that I create. Well, actually, you know what? Heather will probably tell us a little bit about how to make infusions. And if she doesn't, I'll post a little how-to video after that I know that she has. So, okay. After that, I'd like to ask you for some gratitudes. I love to start with some gratitudes. What is something that you're feeling grateful for right now?
Right now, what feels most pertinent to me is there's a really deep sense of gratitude for my family. It's, I have 2 young girls who the one will be 6 right away and the other just turned 3. And I'm really grateful to be spending all this extra time with them. And then my husband, he's able to work from home. So honestly, our little family unit has been something that has given me such an immense amount of gratitude these last few, crazy weeks. And this morning I got up and the back deck is kind of a nice place that I like to meditate. And as we all know, it's been pretty cold here in Edmonton. So today was the first day that I actually went out there and meditated in the morning, and I could hear the birds chirping and singing, and it was really beautiful for me.
Wonderful. Today I am feeling really grateful for this full moon energy. I set all my crystals out last night. I made a big batch of sage water and put that under the moon as well. Yeah, so I pulled in, well, I've got probably half my crystals are still sitting outside, but I pulled some of them in already and they just feel so like bringing just really good energy into the home. So
that's awesome. I did that too the night before last. I actually thought the supermoon was like a day early. And so I got my girls to go out with their favorite stones, and they're just they're so cute and little, right? They just put it up to the moon and then left them outside. And yeah, same thing. It's just such a nice feeling.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier, and you had mentioned that, as I mentioned, you are a holistic health practitioner and an acupuncturist, and you had mentioned that you specialize, that your specialty when it comes to herbs is less of the Chinese medicine practice, I suppose, and more of like a local focus, which I thought is really fantastic. I've heard from many people that when you're tapping into plant medicines, that the ones that are closer to home and more native to your home can be even more powerful. So I'd like you to talk just a little bit about that if you could.
Yes, absolutely. I know I'm really familiar with that school of thought as well, of just utilizing what you have in your own backyard. And yeah, as an acupuncturist, it's a little bit unique that I practice more Western medicine, and there's a lot of there's quite a large amount of overlap there in terms of different herbs that are used, some that are used in Chinese medicine and some that are used in Western medicine. But I took my holistic health education first and then went into acupuncture. So in the holistic health program was where I really kind of cultivated the foundations of my herbology practice. And I learned from Robert Rogers, who owns and works through the Northern Star College here in Edmonton with his wife, Lori Scott Rogers. And he really set the foundation for me with Western herbology, and I really just fell in deep, deep love with it. So by the time I started my venture into acupuncture, I recognized some of the herbs because of that overlap, but I always knew that when I kind of branched out on my own and had my own practice, that this knowledge of Western herbs was going to be the basis of what I used for my patients and for myself and my family.
Awesome. I love that. So I know that when we talked earlier that you'd said that you wanted to share with us some of the herbs that could come in, really handy for us in boosting immunity and bolstering our spirits and our mood to keep us, high vibing and happy. So I would love to maybe tackle the immunity side of it first and see what you've got to suggest there. And then we can move over to the sort of emotional end of things.
Absolutely. There's different categories of herbs, if you will, right? You have lung tonics, you have immunostimulants, you have antivirals, you have antibacterials. And so I always think it's nice to do a little bit of everything, right? And it's not to say that you can't take medicine more, how can I say this, in a more potent sort of way. But I'm a big fan of taking medicines gently and nutritionally and a little bit at a time, and kind of cycling them in and out so our bodies don't get too used to them, so there's still that response, right? And so antivirals that are really common that you're probably hearing a lot about right now are things like garlic, right, which is very, very simple to use. There's also elderberries, like I make elderberry syrup for my family. And that's a mixture of honey and elderberries and herbs that we would call energizers that are kind of warming in nature. So they're things like cloves and black pepper and those kinds of things that are movers, right? They kind of cinnamon, they kind of push the medicines deeper into our bodies. So elderberry syrup is another one. And you heard me talk about the mushrooms, right? Like mushrooms are a very nice addition. And something like the Harmonic Arts hot chocolate mix, right? I can make that for my kids and that's safe to use. It's just hot chocolate to them. You put in some cream and some maple syrup and it's really easy for them to ingest.
Right.
Yeah. Other herbs that I would use for immunity are often astragalus. Astragalus is a lung tonic. I like to take that in tincture form. Tinctures can have a pretty gnarly taste because it's herbs fermented in alcohol, but something to know when you're talking about different methods of ingestion is that tinctures tend to be the most potent because you take them in little drops under the tongue or in a small amount of water, but it's just straight into the bloodstream. It's just sublingual. It's very direct. It's a very, very direct, potent medicine. Whereas something like infusions, like what you're drinking, that's something you can take on the daily and is just much more cumulative over time. It's a gentler but very effective medicine. You can even do things nutritionally like astragalus root. I put that in my bone broth, right? When I was making bone broth. So then it just gently extracts the astragalus out of there. So sorry, I digress. I kind of went in another direction, but
all good.
Yeah, there's different ways you can take herbs for immunity, but astragalus, I guess I'll just go through my favorite ones. Astragalus, you can take typically in tincture form, or you can buy the root and you can add it to soups and stews and then strain it out afterwards. Something like Siberian ginseng, I'm a really big fan of. Siberian ginseng is also called an adaptogen, so it helps our bodies adapt to stressors. And I know a lot of us are feeling some pretty high levels of stress right now, some more than others. But Siberian ginseng is very good for cognitive function and, again, to help bolster the immune system. Reishi and really any kind of mushroom is very good for immunity. And then when we're looking at things like lung tonics, you see there's really good combo tinctures. Usually if you're doing a lung tonic, it's typically more tincture based. So you're looking at herbs such as mullein and elecampane and cordyceps, nettle, those kind of things. A really good infusion to make, which is like a strong tea, is mullein. And that's very good for when you're recovering from a cold, because it's a bronchodilator and it helps you cough up all the yucky stuff that's just sitting in the chest.
So anybody who might be having symptoms, whether it be COVID or otherwise, this would be a great thing to have on hand, yeah?
Absolutely. Mullein is a very underrated herb, and it's one that's not often talked about. I went through a period after I had my first child where I kept getting sick over and over with recurrent bronchitis. So while that's not COVID, it's still a respiratory illness. And you know, I'm breastfeeding, you have to be careful what you're taking at that point, like really careful. And mullein was a godsend for me. And so how you make an infusion is you just take about 1/4 cup of dry herb into a quart-sized mason jar like you have, Annie, and you just fill it with boiling water. There you go. Good. Promo, guys. And you let that sit for whatever duration of time you have. Different herbs do well with different amounts of steeping time. Something like mullein, even 15 minutes extracts way more of the medicinal properties than if you just put it in and started drinking right away. If you want a stronger medicine, you can let mullein steep for a few hours. You then strain it out and you can either drink it straight like that, or I like to put half infusion and half water with a large amount of honey, and you drink that. Not only will it help you cough up all the phlegm that's just kind of sitting there, because it's a bronchodilator, it's going to kind of open up the airways to help you breathe a little bit easier. And the more your lungs get used to doing that, the more healing starts to happen within the airways as well. And something to know about astragalus in particular, astragalus is very good for warding off sickness, and it's very good for recovering from sickness. But I was always taught that you don't want to take astragalus right in the very acute time of sickness, because it can actually push things a little bit deeper.
Sorry, I'm just making some notes here.
No, I feel like I'm giving, you let me know if I'm like going in too many different directions. There you
It's
go.
all
it is
good.
about things you're passionate about.
Maybe after the call, you can add a comment on the video and just maybe highlight some of these, big ones that you feel would be good suggestions. Coming back now, so this is sort of, we've been talking about some immune support. How about the emotional end of things? I know that for so many people that I'm connected with, this has been such a roller coaster of emotion. And, you know, each day is something new, of course, and that is in, you know, regular life as well. But more than ever, I think that there's just been like real highs and real lows for people. So what do you have to offer along that vein?
Again, I get the garden. We specialize in mental and emotional well-being, and so that's a really big part of our practice. I struggled a lot with stress and anxiety and depression in my early 20s, and so it's something that's very dear to my heart. And so these are herbs that I prescribe quite often in my practice, and I'm a big I'm very much about using gentle medicines. And so there is a classification of herbs called nervine tonics. So it's just like it sounds, you know, they're tonic herbs that work to support the nervous system. So there's a lot of talk about adaptogenic herbs, right? And adaptogens, that's very big right now in our world. And yes, they help our body adapt to stress. But nervine tonics are very much about soothing the nervous system and kind of getting at things at their root. Because if you have a sketchy, overwhelmed nervous system, which situations such as these, like stress, you know, things that we can't control, uncertainty, times when we really have to go with the flow and really, really embrace the unknown, right? That can have a really negative impact on our nervous system. And so herbs that we can take to kind of soothe the nervous system and to help repair it, especially if you have pre-existing anxiety or high levels of stress on the regular, these ones would really help. My very favorites are skullcap and milky oat tops. So milky oat tops and oat straw, they're two parts of the same plant, and I use them both a lot in my practice. Milky oat tops, that is, you know, they're the flowering tops of the oats, and that you would take in tincture form. So very good for just calming the nervous system. It also gives you a nice light energy that's non-stimulating. So it's not like drinking a big cup of coffee. It's just like a nice light energy. So if you're looking for something that, if you're feeling kind of laggy and kind of lethargic, you know, you're feeling a little bit depressed, milky oat tops can really kind of lighten your mood a little bit. Also, if you're thinking about the energetics of the plant from a spiritual place, milky oat tops are very good for moistening the lungs, but also for grief. And I think there's a lot of people moving through a lot of sadness, a lot of grief right now. And so that's one thing. Oat straw is another part of that plant, and that you would make an infusion out of. So you would get the dried oat straw, and then you take a quarter of a cup, and I'll send you guys instructions in the comments and everything like that. Again, you just fill it up with boiling water, and you could let it steep for a few hours or overnight, and then you strain it out, and you drink it just like Annie's doing, either with sweetening it with some maple syrup or some juice, or just drinking it straight up, hot or cold. My other favorite herb is skullcap. The nice thing about skullcap, and I like it best taken in probably capsule form, tinctures of skullcap, it's a pretty strong taste, and you don't want to make a tea out of it. It's yucky. But there are some nervine tonics that are quite sedative in nature. Things like passion flower, valerian, hops, which you make beer out of. These ones are nice, but they definitely have a sense of making you groggy, and they're more for like nighttime, those kind of things. I like to think. The nice thing about skullcap is if you're struggling with anxiety or high amounts of stress, it's not a herb that's going to make you feel drugged out or sedated or anything like that, but it's going to give you a nice sense of calm. So, and it's something that you can take if you're having a hard time sleeping as well, if you just can't shut the mind off. Mm-hmm. So Natural Factors is a really good brand that I use quite often, that you can get through Optimum Health in the city here or just on Amazon. and you can get the capsules. And if you find that you have the most anxiety right when you wake up, you can take one in the morning. If you find you're more like a 3 p.m. kind of person, you can take one then. Or if, you know, bedtime is something that you struggle with, you can take one then. And so I'm pretty sure it's 2 to 3 capsules a day is the recommended dosage on Natural Factors. Don't quote me on that, but you can play around with that a little bit. Chamomile is actually a really nice nervine that we just think of in sleepy time tea, but again, making an infusion out of it or
Right.
having a combo with a tincture is a beautiful medicine. And those are
Fantastic.
probably my favorites. I have many more, but those would be my top ones.
So we've talked about some amazing recommendations for the herbs. We've talked about the different ways that you can actually consume these herbs. You did mention Optimum Health as a resource. Are there other resources that you want to throw out there? Oh, we also talked about Harmonic Arts as well.
Yes.
Any other, resources that you want people to have for where to get their hands on this stuff specifically?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, these are challenging, unprecedented times, right? And so,
Right.
you know, it's nice to have this idea of like, and this speaks to, you know, nutrition when you're making things like bone broths or, you know, your organic garlic or all of these things, right? It's nice to try and get as fresh as possible and organic as possible whenever possible. But right now, with things being as crazy as they are, right? Sometimes we need to compromise a little bit. What I've found is that often I always refer my patients to Optimum Health. They have 3 different locations here in the city, one actually in Sherwood Park, and they are doing curbside pickup. So if you get a hold of them, if you call them, or you email them and you actually write a list, they can find what you need. So if you're looking for things like dried oat straw, you can say, I need dried oat straw. They have a brand that's their own that is beautiful. And so you can make orders with them for curbside pickup, and they're wonderful. Harmonic Arts has just reopened its online forum. For understandable reasons, there are some limitations on immunity herbs, and there are some things that are out of stock, but they're a beautiful company, and they're just getting more and more every day. So that's something to look into, especially they have beautiful, the products that they have with like greens supplementation or mushroom powders or nice combinations of pre-blended teas or tinctures. They have one called Bronchi Build that would be really good for people suffering from COVID right now, and lung tonics. Like there's really nice combinations like that. There's actually a Canadian-based company called Herbie's Herbs that are, it's very undervalued, and it has a very large amount of different herbs available in the bulk dried form and in tincture form. So that's something you could look into as well. And then there's always like good old Amazon, and that's probably, that would be like last resort situation for me, unless you're kind of very familiar with the seller. But even things like, you know, elderberries and things like that, or I think astragalus tincture is pretty easy to find still, and tinctures are pretty easy to find still, but there are certain things that are starting to be a little bit more limited.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I want to now highlight what you're doing. So Heather recently opened up her own practice called The Garden Holistic, which is in Westmount. It is a beautiful studio, and not only does she have people there practicing out of the studio, she's also got an incredible workshop space where she's going to be also hosting workshops. So I just want to put a bug in everybody's ear about the Garden Holistic. Please go and follow her page so that you know as soon as they are back open and operating, that you've got all of that information and that you know exactly where to find Heather to access her services in person. Heather is such an amazing practitioner. I can personally say that when I go in to see Heather, I know that I am going to be fully heard and held, and that Heather has this really incredible way of making you feel just comfortable in, you know, speaking what's going on and comfortable receiving her gifts. You know, the last time I was there, she also did some Reiki on me, which was just incredible. So I just, yeah, I really can't, you know, say high enough praises for Heather and what she does. But I do know that Heather's also got some offerings on the table at this time while she's, you know, working from home. So Heather, I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Oh, well, thank you so much for everything you
Of
said,
course.
Annie. That means so much to me. And, you know, to have beautiful friends like Annie that support you through the process of opening, you know, our business has been just beautiful. Eventually, like typically we have our own herbal apothecary. We were just putting the finishing touches on it and setting it up. And so that's something that we're going to have open and that I'm currently working on so that we can launch that properly when we reopen our doors. And, you know, because what makes the garden unique is that we treat one patient at a time, and that we're able to add in things like Reiki to our treatments, which is something, you know, different and unique, and I think special for our patients. And in the meantime, while the garden is closed, which, you know, I think will be for a little while, given the landscape of things, we're going to reopen as soon as we can. But just please keep checking our page and our Instagram for blog posts. If you've had, you know, a personal experience with us, we'd love a review or anything of that nature. But right now, we're just going to be putting some finishing touches on our websites and gearing up for workshops that will be coming up as soon as we can reopen.
Awesome. Awesome. Are you meeting with clients right now?
You know what I did was I offered kind of free virtual help for anyone that was sort of struggling at this time. You know, a lot of my colleagues are doing virtual consultations and things like that, and we're still considering whether or not that's the right fit for us. At the moment, we've kind of opened our you know, opened our hearts and just felt good in giving out sort of free information and an ear if people need it. But at this time, we're not doing any sort of paid virtual consultations or anything like that.
Right. But if people are, you know, looking for information, they can access you with that offering. Yes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're looking for anything, if you're struggling, like please reach out to us through our Instagram page or our website, and we're happy to talk with you and support you in any way that we can, whether or not you're a current patient, a past patient, or a new patient.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about, to offer, whether it be, you know, from a professional point of view, personal point of view, if you want to promote somebody else and what they're doing, anything you want to add?
You know, I think I'm just, like we were talking about when we first got on here before we went live, I think I've just been so touched and so inspired by everyone who's just reaching out in connection right now and trying to support one another. I think we're all trying to navigate our way through this and just do the best that we can. And so the message that I would leave you all with is just, again, to try and open our hearts and be there for one another through connection in any way that we possibly can, and to just sort of share what we have to offer. And I think you doing the things that you're doing with these meetings and these interviews is just an extension of that. So I just want to thank you very much for what you're doing in terms of connecting us all and helping us all share whatever knowledge we can.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing, that's something I always ask is, do you have any great ideas, cool tricks, tips, anything that you can offer in terms of ways to keep us occupied and entertained during this time. So this might be like a personal activity that you're engaging in yourself. This might be something that you've done with your family that was a lot of fun. Just something that's something that we can take away and go, hey, I could use this in my life.
You know, a lot of my patients would say that they know me for like little mini meditations. And so it's all well and good to have these long, beautiful meditations. Like I enjoy those as well. But, you know, there has been times in my life for sure where, especially, you know, maternity leave and stuff like that, where it's just you kind of grab what you can when you can do it.
Yeah.
And you know, me going out this morning on the deck was just an extension of that, right? I'm a big fan of just taking 5 minutes that I have and lying down and putting like a crystal, you know, on my throat or my heart chakra and just lying in full savasana and just breathing into that, right? I think we have this idea that we need to have the perfect place to sit and the perfect candle and the perfect amount of time. And like, that's not reality for so many of us, right? Our lives are messy and busy and full and chaotic and wonderful and vibrant. And, you know, you just have to kind of, I think, take the opportunities that you have and take what you can get. And so sometimes my meditations look like me just holding hands with my daughters in a circle for like a minute and they're just like all over the place. And, or little rituals like putting out the crystals under a full super moon and just kind of writing something down for myself in a journal, even if I have just like a minute.
Yeah.
And so I think the self-care practices of just taking mini meditations, mini moments, is something that I find really helpful for myself and for my kids, even for my relationships with my husband and my family. And, you know, it's we don't have to be perfect, right? It's just about,
Absolutely.
taking that time.
I love that. That's something that I try to practice as well, is just having these moments, these mindful moments throughout the day where you just sort of sink into yourself and go, you know, let all your senses in and where am I at right now? And, you know, just feeling into that moment can be its own type of meditation in itself, right? And the more of those moments that we can have. Yeah,
mindful moments. I like that. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Heather, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. I'm so grateful that you were able to make time for this. I know that you've got, you know, a family also inhabiting your space and you know, looking for your attention. So I won't take any more of your time, but thank you for being here. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for having me. I feel so grateful. And
absolutely.
Wonderful.
For those of you who want to know what's going on coming up, on Friday, I've got Joyanne coming on. She is an astrology expert. She's got so much wisdom in her head about astrology. It just blows my own mind. And she's going to be talking a little bit about the changing of the times and how our values might be shifting. And on Monday, I've got Elise Braithwaite coming on. She is an SRT expert. This is sort of, for those of you who aren't familiar with SRT, it's sort of a clearing of your Akashic records, which I'll let her tell you more about on Monday. But you're going to really want to tune into that as well. As for the rest of next week, I've got some things in the works, so I'll let you know as that information comes in. All right, I'm going to call it. Heather, thank you. Peace. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Take it easy. Have a beautiful day.